first cocktail is a Brazilian Limeade, which is basically a wonderful spring-like cocktail. We start with a blender. We zest and juice 5 limes, and then we take the contents of that with some sweetened condensed milk, a little bit of simple syrup, and we pop that in the blender. And this is what we end up with, this wonderful looking concoction, which we will then pour into the glasses. And really, as with any non-alcoholic cocktail, you can make an alcoholic version of this with rum if you wanted, but today we are sticking without that, and we'll have a nice spring-like beverage here. Now, the interesting thing is, with a lot of zest from the lime peel, you can actually, the longer this drink sits, the more bitter it can become. So with the zest, we like to make sure that there's only enough in the blender to give this a nice bouquet of flavor, rather than a very bitter lime, oriented or sour. Very good. Here's our Brazilian Limeade for spring. Cheers.
And my lime fell off.
Well,
fortunately,
I have an emergency backup lime.
One should always have a backup emergency line.
And cheers to
Thank
that.
goodness. That is really, really nice.
Doesn't it have a nice?
Yeah, it's a very mild flavor, milder than I would have expected. And it almost tastes, whoops, I'm spilling everything. It almost tastes like a little bit of a milkshake or a smoothie. It's got a really nice flavor.
I agree that fresh lime juice with the zest really gives it a nice floral kind of a bouquet with the lime, rather than a heavy duty, artificial flavor that you might find in some bar drinks where they use, processed lime juice or something like that.
Are there, did you say there are eggs in there at all, or?
No, as a matter of fact, there are not. But it is interesting because I do like to do a dry shake with many of the cocktails, as Laura and our audience will know. And that's where we take some fresh egg whites into a shaker, and we shake them on up until you get a nice white egg foam. And you could put that on top of this particular drink to give it a wonderful, nice little lightness to it. The egg white also provides a little bit of sweetness.
Why did you choose
which would help with the lime
Limeade?
as well. Well, with the first 2 poems, as part of our first reading, it was a little hard to come up with an inspiration for a cocktail. They are very serious subjects. But I was taken by the poem Remembering Clara, in that she was very oriented to church, and that was a very important aspect of her life. And of course, being in the Midwest, coming from the Midwest, many churches have church suppers, and green jello or lime jello is a huge feature of cuisine at any Midwestern church. And so I had this idea in my mind of doing something with lime without getting into the controversy of whether you put pears in the lime jello or not. I stuck purely with lime juice.
That is a big controversy. You don't want to get people angry about that.
Yes. With our 8 point, how many million now?
I think we're up to 8.89.
Excellent. Excellent.
What do you think makes it a poem?
Oh, gracious. That's not the question.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
All right. Well, all right. So let me say that the poem I enjoy writing or reading is the one that engages a broad, I mean, there are exceptions, obviously short poems, but generally speaking, poems that engage a broad sense of the senses broadly, the 5 senses and balance, and all the other senses we can think of. Those that engage a sense of time in some way.
Okay.
Including, so I write a fair number of historical poems, but even Clara, it engages time, his history, or our life and time. That we're mortal and we pass through time. And then broadly, again, not every poem does this or could do all of this, but things that are engaging theologically.
second drink is called the Marigold, and I was inspired by the treatment of marigolds in our second reading today, which just sounded, it was kind of a neat and poignant reference, and I thought I was a bit, inspired by that. The Marigold is a cocktail that has a number of very fiery ingredients. With the Marigold, we have a couple of small glasses here. What we're first going to do is mix in or pour a few ounces of orange juice. Then the wonderful complement to orange juice that we see in a number of cocktails, grenadine, which will give it a little bit of a tequila sunrise, I think, type of a color. And then what we use is, because we're making a non-alcoholic version of this cocktail, we're going to use some sparkling water, which in this case is kind of a bit of an orange mango. If we were making an alcoholic version, we would actually use something like Prosecco or champagne in order to provide the bit of sparkle in it. And so now I will kind of stir this up a little bit. And as you can see, it has taken on a little bit of the cast of a marigold flower. And I'll cool it off with a couple of ice cubes. Here is the marigold. Cheers.
What do you think?
I like it. It has that nice little sparkle, that you get from the use of the sparkling water. Very fruity and floral. And I like a little bit of the sweetness of the grenadine that's in there. What do you think?
I think this would be really nice on a really hot day, especially after you've, it's like the cocktail equivalent of Michael's lawnmower beer.
Beers. Yes.
So I think in the right circumstance, I would like it a lot. It's a little bit fizzy for me, a little bit, on the right day, I'd like it a lot. I'll leave it at that.
Very good.
I was very interested in your story about him being a whistleblower, and you're also writing a book about that.
Right,
Do you want to tell our audience of, I think we're up to about 8.98 million.
Just in the last day.
That's true. That's true. We've gained 100,000 listeners in the last day. They were very excited to hear you. Don't take anything I say seriously. I write
and each of them send me $1. Is that the case?
Well, if they'd send me $1, I'll split it with you.
All right, fair enough.
I could advertise. We have our wonderful Books and Brews mug. So if you could all go buy that, please.
Yes.
Then we can feed our sheep.
Yep, by chance, totally, utterly random chance, I have a copy here.
Oh, that's skating rough ground.
Oh, you're right. Gosh. So here we go. I can read now. So mouthwork.
Oh,
and that's my grandfather Albert, the one that rushes into the room and thinks that my dad was the one that shot. So that's my dad right here. I don't know if you can see him.
Hold it up a little higher. There we go.
He's kind of he's the one right there, and he's scowling at the camera.
Okay.
The way he
which one over is he? Starting from your uncle's right hand or great uncle?
The great uncle's not here. That's my grandfather.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That's Albert, the one. This is my father. I can't even see it. Right here.
Oh, right there. Okay.
Right,
So the
right.
one holding his left hand.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So that's his older brother, the one that's holding his hand. And
That's really neat having the family photograph on the
yeah,
cover.
and I've studied that photograph a lot, and I'm thinking my uncle, my dad's older brother, is holding him so he won't leave the frame of the picture while it's being taken. Which I think is why my father is scowling at the camera, because he doesn't want any part of it, but he's being held in captivity. And I don't know if you can tell
That's
on the
funny.
screen, but behind my dad's head is the sheep, the back of a sheep.
Okay, I cannot see that. I'll
Yeah,
have to look closer.
yeah, you could, on the photograph I sent you should be able to see it. Yeah, so I think it's probably March of 1977, a swarm of FBI agents settled down on little town of 4,000 people, North Wilkesboro, right? And
Wow.
there's probably an FBI agent for every 100 inhabitants, right? And so they do this, and they take over a conference room in the bank. And my dad my mom told my dad he needed to say something because the bank had a history of bugging. No, beyond just bugging the IRS, it was more than that, but that was the most illegal thing they've done up to that point. So my dad then went to a lawyer, and the lawyer said, if you tell the complete and absolute truth, I will represent you without charge.
Mhm.
Then they went, I think who they went to was one of the original IRS auditors, investigators that my dad knew, but they might have gone to the FBI, at least at some point it gets to the FBI. And my dad says, back in 71, I planted a bug on the IRS, and I'm willing to bet anything that if you scan the office, that the conference room that the FBI is using in the bank headquarters, you'll find a bug. And bingo, they did. It was in the phone back in the old phone like this, right? It
You
was in
know,
it was in the receiver, right, in the
the old
speaker
school.
of the yeah.
That's an amazing. So, what is our third cocktail?
Our third drink is actually called a white peach, and I was inspired by one of the stanzas of the third reading, which actually spoke to a white peach. And white peaches, of course, are marvelously sublime summer fruit, not necessarily as peachy as like a yellow cling peach or a freestone, but it makes a nice backdrop for a drink. And so we have a number of neat ingredients to be able to put into that. So I first start with some blended white peach, which, because white peaches aren't exactly fresh at this time of year, I found some in the freezer section and blended them so they make a nice little bit of a slush, because we were still a little bit frozen going into the blender. We then put in just a teaspoon of freshly squeezed, of course, we don't like any other kind, of lemon juice, just to give it a little bit of a kick. Then we have some simple syrup. This helps to even out the flavor with a little bit of sweetness. And if we were to make an alcoholic version of this cocktail, we would use some Prosecco to provide a little bit of that vim and sparkle that you would get from a summer drink. But here what we have is some peach nectarine sparkling water. And this will give us the sparkle without the alcohol. And with that, I'll put a couple of ice cubes in to give it that summer chill. It's nice to have on the front porch after a busy day. And I will give this a bit of a stir. Here we have the white peach.
Cheers.
To a summer cocktail, mocktail.
Mocktail, yeah. That has that same kind of what you call sparkle zing that the other one does, but I think I like the flavors of this one better. And this would also, yes, as you say, a wonderful on a hot day. I saw this on it. I did want to ask you, a couple of your other projects are very interesting. You annotated a book about Ida Crumpler Beard, and that led you to writing about Jim Crow. What brought you to Ida Crumpler Beard in the first place? And if you want to tell the audience who she is.
Well, all right. She was obscure, not well-educated young woman, mother by the time she wrote her book. Lived in Winston-Salem. That's when they were actually called Winston and Salem, but they were so close together that people talked about them still already as the Twin Cities. She wrote a book. Her husband abandoned her and her two kids. I think the kids were like 14 and 11 or something, and she had no way to make a living. So she decided she'd write a book, publish it herself, market it herself, and that's The Deserted Wife. My Own Life or A Deserted Wife. And the book is partly just revenge porn about all the horrible stuff her husband did and how she fought back. You can't say it's well written, but it is pretty honestly written, and it includes an amazing number of people and places and institutions in Winston-Salem. She got married in 1880. She's writing the book in 1898. So that time period, if you're interested in Winston-Salem at all, or small towns in a small industrializing town in the Upper South, it's kind of interesting in the acquittal. So Arthur Tuttle's in jail. He's, I think, 18 or 19. And the rumor goes around town, white and black communities, that there's going to be a lynching attempted. Now, we know it's in the black community because Arthur Tuttle's brother went to a church and said, y'all need to come and surround the church and guard it because there's going to be a lynching. And I know it was in the white community because Ida Beard, her husband told, he was a justice of the peace or an assistant to a justice of the peace.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
He told her that there was going to be a lynching attempt. And this is interesting, he sided with Tuttle, which the young black man, which just shocked no end his wife, who thought that was horrible. You would,
And that's fascinating because he's the bad guy in her book.
He's the bad guy in the book, but in this case, I have to say, we kind of root for him, right? Yeah, he did the right thing. He was trying to do the right thing. I don't think he was very effective at it, but then it would have been hard. But the thing is, it's not clear that a lynching was actually attempted. What happened was it's hard to know how many, as many as 300, mostly men, almost all, if not entirely black men, surrounded the jail armed, or they guarded the jail. And the Forsyth Rifles, the local militia, and armed sheriff deputies came up. Someone fired a shot, of course, and then everyone starts shooting freely. None of the deputies or militia were killed. Some were injured slightly.
That's very fortunate with guns going off all over.
Yeah,
the place.
and unknown, and the black community really hid what happened to theirs. So it's probable that some were wounded. We know for sure. We know only the one person by name who it was. Don't remember it right now. But there was probably some people killed as well. But that was all hidden. So the white community never actually knew what happened. So and that's how I found out about that story. And what I really became interested in was of the 300 people or so that were guarding the jail, 50 were arrested. About 50 were arrested, and we know them by name. So what I've been doing on and off, and it's been on for a while I'm working on the other book, but what I've been doing is trying to document who they were and what their lives were like before and after. So